It was a rainy morning. The streets were wet, and people rushed to find shelter. Umbrellas covered the sidewalks, and cars moved slowly through the water-filled roads. But in the middle of the street, one scene made everyone stop. A young black woman stood silently. Her hands were in handcuffs. Two white police officers held her arms tightly on each side. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't even look afraid. She just stood still, calm, quiet, strong. The rain hit her face, but she didn't move. Officer Rick, tall and loud, looked at her with a smirk. "Why so quiet now?" he said. "You think that innocent face will help you." The other officer, Dan, added, "They always act like angels when they get caught." Still, the young woman said nothing. She looked straight ahead, eyes steady. People around started pulling out their phones and recording. A man whispered to his friend, "She doesn't look like a criminal. She's not even resisting." A woman said, "She looks peaceful." Officer Rick pulled her forward. "Let's go. We've wasted enough time." The woman walked with them without a fight. Her name was Alina Grace, but no one knew that yet. At the side of the road, an older woman shouted, "She didn't do anything. I saw it all." Officer Dan replied coldly, "Ma'am, step back. This is official police business." She was helping someone. The woman yelled, "She saved a kid." Rick turned to her and snapped, "That's enough." But the woman kept shouting as they pushed Alina into the police car. Inside the car, Alina sat quietly. Her clothes were wet. Her hair dripped water. But her face showed no fear. Rick looked at her in the mirror. "You don't have anything to say. No crying. No begging." Alina met his eyes in the mirror. Calm. Silent. Dan laughed. "She's trying to act smart. They all think they can play mind games." Still, Alina didn't reply. She turned her face to the window, watching the city pass by. The rain blurred the lights and buildings. At the police station, they led her down the hallway. Other officers turned to look. One asked, "What's she in for?" Rick replied, "Trespassing, obstruction, possible theft." Dan added, "We might add more." She refused to leave a restricted area. A younger officer nearby looked confused. "She doesn't look dangerous," he said. Rick rolled his eyes. "That's what they want you to think." In the holding cell, Alina sat on the cold bench. 4 other women were there, some crying, some shouting, one just lying down. Alina didn't speak. She sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap. One woman asked her, "What did you do?" Alina didn't answer. Another woman laughed. "She thinks she's better than us." But Alina wasn't judging anyone. She was thinking, waiting. Back at the desk, Officer Rick opened a file. He frowned. "There's nothing on her. No ID. No phone. No bag." Dan checked the system. No record. No address. Not even a traffic ticket. Rick raised his eyebrows. "Who is she?" Dan shrugged. "She's hiding something. I'm sure of it." They started writing the report, adding extra details. She refused to follow orders, acted suspicious, maybe connected to stolen property. All lies. But they didn't care. "She'll be forgotten by tomorrow," Rick said. That evening, the woman who had witnessed everything outside the station made a phone call. "I saw the police arrest a girl," she said. "She didn't do anything wrong." "What's her name?" the person on the phone asked. "I heard someone call her Alina Grace." There was silence on the other end. Then the voice said, "Are you sure?" "Yes," the woman replied. She was calm, like she knew something. "I'll be there in 1 hour," the voice replied. In her cell, Alina finally closed her eyes. She didn't look angry. She didn't look scared. She looked ready. She knew the truth. She knew her power. And she knew this was only the beginning. The walls were gray. The floor was cold. and the air inside the holding cell felt heavy, like silence that refused to leave. Alina sat in the same corner she had been placed in hours ago. She hadn't moved much. No one could tell if she was thinking, resting, or simply waiting. 3 other women sat nearby. One was sleeping. One was pacing angrily. The third was talking to herself, frustrated with the system. But Alina said nothing. She kept her hands folded on her lap, eyes fixed on the ground. From the other side of the bars, a female officer walked by. She paused and looked inside. "Hey," she said, "you okay?" Alina raised her eyes slowly. "I'm fine," she replied, calmly. "You want water?" "No, thank you." The officer stared for a moment. She had worked here for years. She had seen fear, anger, even fake strength. But this girl was different. She wasn't scared. She wasn't trying to act tough. She was simply strong. Real strength. Quiet strength. The officer walked away, still thinking about her face. Meanwhile, in the main office, Officer Rick was laughing with Dan. "She thinks she's smart," Rick said. "But the charges are strong enough. No one's gonna ask questions." Dan was looking through her file again. "There's nothing in the system. Still no ID. No record. She just appeared out of nowhere." "That's what makes her dangerous," Rick replied. "Quiet ones always have something to hide." Back in the cell, the pacing woman suddenly shouted, "This is all messed up. I didn't steal anything. Just because I look poor doesn't mean I'm a thief." Alina looked up at her. "You don't have to shout," she said gently. "The truth will come." The woman paused. "What do you know about truth?" Alina gave her a soft smile. "More than they think." Outside the station, a black car arrived. A woman in a suit stepped out. She looked powerful, confident, serious. She walked to the front desk and said, "I need to speak to the officer in charge of a woman arrested today. Her name is Alina Grace." The officer at the desk looked up in surprise. "Who are you?" he asked. The woman handed him a card. It read, "Federal Justice Department." The officer stood up immediately. "I'll get someone." Back inside, the younger officer, Jacob, sat at his desk. He had heard everything. How Rick had added false charges, how Dan had laughed about it. He had seen the video clips on someone's phone earlier. Alina had done nothing wrong. She was standing near a child who had slipped in the rain. She was helping. But instead of thanking her, they had handcuffed her. Jacob looked at her file again. Still blank. He whispered to himself, "Why would someone like her not fight back?" He felt uneasy. His hands trembled a little. He stood up and walked to the cells. "Excuse me," he said to the female officer on duty. "Can I speak to the woman in cell 4? Alina?" He nodded. She opened the door. Jacob walked in slowly. Alina looked up at him. "I just wanted to ask." He hesitated. "Why didn't you resist when they arrested you?" Alina looked at him quietly for a moment. Then she spoke. "Because when the truth is on your side, you don't need to scream. The world will scream for you." Jacob blinked. Her voice was calm, but her words were powerful. He didn't know what to say. He turned and left. But something inside him had changed. In the hallway, Officer Rick was walking fast. A senior officer stopped him. "There's someone asking about the girl you brought in," he said. "Who?" Rick asked. "Someone from the federal department. She's asking a lot of questions." Rick's face turned pale. "What? What kind of questions? Who arrested her? Why? What proof you had?" Rick tried to stay calm. "She was on private property. That's enough." "Did she resist?" "No," Rick said slowly. "But." "No buts. If you mess this up, it's on you." Rick's heart was beating faster now. He knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Back in the cell, Alina heard a soft buzz. The female officer returned. "Someone's here to see you," she said. Alina stood up. "Let's go," the officer said. As they walked down the hallway, other officers turned their heads. Some whispered. Some just stared. There was something about her presence, so quiet, yet so commanding, that made even the walls seem to listen. In the waiting room, the woman in the suit stood with a serious face. Alina walked in. They looked at each other. The woman smiled. "Alina," she said, "it's time." Alina nodded. She didn't ask what was happening. She already knew. The police station was quieter than usual. Officer Rick sat at his desk, typing quickly. His face was tight, nervous. Sweat rolled down his neck, but he kept wiping it away with his sleeve. Dan leaned over him. "Just finish it," he whispered. "Make it sound clean." Rick nodded. On his screen was the incident report, the document that would decide whether Alina Grace would face real charges or walk free. But instead of truth, he was writing lies. Subject refused to leave private property. Subject argued with officers and became aggressive. Subject was found near possible stolen items. All of it was false. But Rick didn't stop. He knew if the department found out what really happened, he could lose his badge, maybe even go to jail. Dan whispered, "Make sure it sounds believable. We don't want any questions." Rick nodded again. "She won't fight this. She hasn't even called a lawyer." But Rick didn't know. Alina already had a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Her older sister, Naomi Grace, a top lawyer with the Federal Justice Department. The woman in the black suit who had walked in the day before. And Naomi wasn't here to play games. In another room, Naomi sat with a judge and the police chief. She placed a small USB drive on the table. "This is body cam footage from one of your officers. Not the one who filed the report, one of the rookies standing nearby." The judge leaned in. "And what does it show?" Naomi replied, her voice calm and sharp. "It shows the truth." Back at his desk, Rick printed the report and handed it to the clerk. "File it," he said. The clerk nodded. Rick turned to Dan. "It's done. She's not getting out of this." But just then, a phone rang on the main desk. The clerk picked it up, listened, and looked over at Rick. Her face changed. "Officer Rick, the judge wants to see you. Now." Rick's stomach dropped. In the holding area, Alina was back in her cell. But this time, she wasn't alone. Naomi stood just outside the bars, speaking quietly with her. "You okay?" Naomi asked. Alina smiled. "Always." "You've made them nervous," Naomi said. "They're rushing. Lying." "They've always done that," Alina replied. "But now, they're being watched." Naomi nodded. "I submitted the footage." Alina closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't need revenge. She didn't even need to speak loud. She just needed the truth to speak for itself. Officer Jacob, the young one who had visited her earlier, walked by. He saw Naomi and paused. "You're her lawyer?" he asked, surprised. Naomi nodded. "She's not just a lawyer," Alina added quietly. "She's my sister." Jacob blinked. It all made sense now. Her silence, her calmness, her strength. He looked down in shame. I knew something was wrong. I should have said something." Naomi looked at him. "You still can." Jacob took a deep breath. He turned and walked back to his desk. In the judge's chamber, Rick stood with his arms crossed, trying to look confident. The judge slid a paper across the desk. "Is this your report?" he asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Rick replied. The judge tapped the paper. "This says the suspect resisted arrest, was aggressive, and was near stolen items." Rick nodded. "Correct." The judge leaned back. "Then why," he said slowly, "does this body cam footage show the suspect helping a child in the rain, while you and your partner arrived shouting at her, without reason?" Rick's face went pale. I don't know what footage you saw, but..." The judge cut him off. "It's clear. There's audio, and the timestamps match your report." Silence. Then the judge said firmly, "You are under investigation, Officer Rick. This report is forged." Back in the cell, a door opened. The female officer entered. "Alina, you're being released." The other women in the cell looked up. "What?" One of them said. "She didn't even do anything," another whispered. Alina stood slowly. As she walked out, one woman said, "You didn't even fight. How did you get out?" Alina turned and gave her a gentle smile. "I didn't fight," she said softly. "I waited for the truth." Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was clearing. Naomi walked beside her. "You want to go home?" Naomi asked. Alina shook her head. "Not yet." "Where then?" Alina looked ahead, her eyes focused. To the courtroom. The courtroom was full. Reporters, officers, lawyers, and people who had seen the video on social media all came to see one thing. Who was Alina Grace, and why was she arrested? The judge entered. Everyone stood. Officer Rick sat in the front row, sweating. He had been forced to take leave. His forged report was under review. But he came today, hoping things wouldn't get worse. They were about to. Alina walked in calmly, dressed in a simple white shirt and black pants. Her face was peaceful, but her eyes were strong. Next to her stood Naomi, her sister, her lawyer, and her shield. Across the room, the prosecutor shuffled his papers, unsure what to say. The original report had been discredited, but they still had to explain why she was arrested. The judge spoke first. "This is the hearing of Miss Alina Grace. The court will now review evidence regarding her arrest." Naomi stood. "Your Honor, we request to begin with body cam footage from Officer Jacob." The judge nodded. The video began to play. Footage scene. Rain is falling. A small boy slips on the sidewalk. Alina runs to help him. She takes off her coat, covers him. Suddenly, two officers arrive, Rick and Dan. They shout, "What are you doing here? Step away from the child." Alina raises her hand slowly. "I'm just helping," she says, but they don't listen. They grab her, handcuff her. The crowd around them begins recording. She never resists. She just looks up and says, "You're making a mistake." End scene. The courtroom is silent. The judge looks at the officers. "Is this the full footage?" "Yes, Your Honor," Naomi replies. "No edits. This is what happened." The judge turns to the prosecutor. "Do you still believe there were grounds for arrest?" The prosecutor stumbles. "Well, the officers said she refused to answer questions. She didn't show ID." Naomi steps forward. "She didn't show ID because she wasn't required to. She wasn't breaking any law. She wasn't on private property. She was helping a child." She pauses, and she didn't scream or fight because she knew this moment would come. Officer Rick shifts in his seat. Dan avoids eye contact. Their lies are falling apart. Naomi continues, "Your Honor, I would also like to submit this document." She holds up a paper. It's a copy of Officer Rick's original report, now proven to be false. The judge reads it. He frowns. This report says she resisted, that she was aggressive. He looks at Rick. "Do you stand by this report?" Rick stands slowly. He clears his throat. "I may have written it in a rush. The situation was tense. I might have misunderstood." The judge narrows his eyes. "You didn't misunderstand. You lied." Gasps are heard in the courtroom. Rick tries to sit down quickly, but it's too late. His name is stained. Back at the bench, Naomi finishes her statement. "Your Honor, my client was arrested without cause. She was treated with disrespect. She stayed silent, not because she was weak, but because she believed in the system." She looks at the crowd. And today, that system is watching. The judge leans forward. "Miss Grace," he says gently, "do you have anything to say?" Alina stands slowly. She looks around the courtroom. Then she says, calmly, "I didn't come here for revenge. I came here for truth. Because next time, it might not be me. It might be someone who doesn't have a sister, or a camera, or a voice." The judge nods. He looks at the officers again. "This court will take further action regarding the arresting officers. Miss Grace, you are free to go." As Alina and Naomi walk out of the courtroom, people begin to clap. Not because she won, but because she never stopped believing in truth. Outside, a reporter asks her, "Who are you really?" Alina smiles. "Just someone who stayed quiet long enough for the truth to speak." The courtroom was behind her now, but Alina's quiet fight had just begun. The news had already spread. "Innocent woman arrested without reason" was all over the internet. Clips from the body cam footage were being shared. Millions of people were watching, asking one question: how many more have they done this to? Inside the police department, panic had started. Officer Dan slammed a locker shut. "This is getting out of hand," he said. Rick sat nearby, head in hands. "I told you we shouldn't have touched that report." Dan glared at him. "We didn't know who she was." Rick whispered, "It doesn't matter who she was. She was innocent." Silence fell between them. They weren't afraid of Alina now. They were afraid of what else would be uncovered. The police chief stood at the front of the department meeting room. Officers gathered, uneasy. He held up a printed report. "This is what happens," the chief said, "when power is used the wrong way." No one moved. No one spoke. He looked around the room. "There will be an internal investigation. Any past cases that involve these two officers, Rick and Dan, will be reviewed." Someone whispered, "They're making an example out of them." Another replied, "They should." Meanwhile, Naomi sat in a quiet office, reviewing papers. Alina walked in with coffee. Naomi looked up. "They've started opening old cases." Alina sat down. "And?" Naomi nodded. 3 other complaints against Rick, 2 against Dan, all buried. Alina stared at the table. "So this wasn't just about me." Naomi's voice was low. It never was. Later that day, Jacob, the young officer, stood in front of an ethics panel. He was nervous, but he had made a choice. He told them what he saw. He told the truth. "I knew it was wrong," he said. "I froze. I wish I had done something sooner." The panel member asked, "Why are you speaking now?" Jacob looked up. "Because she didn't raise her voice, but I still heard her." In the city, peaceful protests began. People held signs. "Justice for Alina." "Stop silent injustice." "Truth has no badge." They weren't angry. They were awake. Alina watched from a distance. She didn't speak at the protest. She didn't need to. Her silence had already changed something. Back inside the department, Rick got called into the chief's office. He entered, hands shaking. The chief didn't waste time. "You're suspended until further notice." Rick nodded slowly. "I understand." As he turned to leave, the chief added, "Do you understand why this is happening?" Rick paused at the door. "Yes. I broke trust. I forgot why I became a cop." Dan tried to defend himself. He told the media Alina was uncooperative and suspicious. But the truth was out now, and no one was listening to his excuses anymore. A week later, Alina was invited to speak at a university law seminar. She wore no makeup, no fancy clothes, just the same calm smile. "I didn't plan to become a symbol," she said. "I only planned to stay true to myself." A student asked, "Were you scared?" Alina nodded. "Yes, but silence doesn't mean fear. Sometimes it means focus." Back at Naomi's office, 2 men arrived. One of them wore a government badge. "We'd like to speak with Alina," he said. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "About what?" The second man spoke softly. "About a position. Something bigger. Something that helps people who never get a voice." Naomi turned to Alina. Alina didn't say yes. She just smiled. She knew this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something greater. Alina sat quietly at the long table. Across from her sat two men from the Department of Civil Rights. They weren't like the officers who arrested her. They were respectful, careful with their words, and serious. One of them leaned forward and said, "Miss Grace, we believe your voice can help others." Alina raised an eyebrow. "How?" He placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents, photos, and testimonies. "All of these are people like you, arrested, ignored, silenced." She flipped through the pages. Her hand slowed. Her eyes scanned the pain written on every line. One woman spent 3 nights in jail for no reason. One boy was hurt during arrest, and no one reported it. One man lost his job after being wrongly accused. "This is just one city," the man said. "We want to create something new, something fair." They offered Alina a role. Not a job behind a desk. A voice on a panel. A place at the table. They wanted her to represent victims, to help change how justice worked from the inside. Naomi sat beside her, watching closely. "Why me?" Alina asked. The second man replied, "Because when they tried to silence you, you stayed strong. That matters." Alina didn't answer right away. She walked out of the office and into the street. It was cold. The air was quiet. She remembered the rain, the cuffs, the shame. She remembered staying calm when her heart was shaking inside her chest. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "I didn't ask for this." But deep down she knew. Some people are chosen by pain, and they use it to protect others. The next day, she returned to the office. "I'll do it," she said. "But I'm not doing it for politics. I'm doing it for the girl who's arrested tonight and has no sister to defend her." The two men nodded. They understood. Her position was made public. News headlines changed. Wrongfully arrested woman to lead new justice panel. Alina Grace. From silence to strength. She stayed calm. Now she leads the reform. But not everyone was happy. In a small room at the police department, Officer Dan was furious. "They're making her a hero," he shouted. "What about us? What about our side?" Rick, now quiet and reflective, replied, "There is no side when you arrest someone for no reason." Dan sneered, "You think she'll forgive us?" Rick shook his head. "She's not doing this for revenge. That's what makes it worse for you." Alina started her work slowly. She sat with victims. She listened to stories. No cameras, no microphones, just truth. One woman cried as she spoke. "They broke my door. They took my son." Alina held her hand. "I hear you," she said gently, "and I'll carry your voice where it matters." She began reviewing files. One night, Naomi walked into her room and saw Alina still reading. "You can't fix the whole world," Naomi said softly. "I know," Alina whispered, eyes still on the page. "But maybe I can fix one page at a time." Meanwhile, Officer Jacob watched the news with quiet pride. He had testified. He had told the truth. Now, his own station treated him differently. Some called him a traitor. Others called him brave. But Jacob knew. He had done what Alina did. He had stayed honest, even when it was hard. At the next public hearing, Alina stood at a podium. This time, she wasn't the accused. She was the leader. And she said something that made the room fall still. Justice isn't about shouting. It's about listening to the quiet ones. The ones who don't scream but carry pain in their eyes. I was one of them. I still am. And now I'm here to make sure they're never ignored again. In the back row, a mother with her teenage daughter wiped a tear. The daughter whispered, "Who is she?" The mother smiled. "She's someone who turned silence into strength." It had been months since the day Alina was handcuffed in the rain. Now she stood in the same courtroom, but this time not as the accused. The room was full again. Reporters, citizens, activists, and students sat quietly, waiting. The case today was important. Officer Dan was on trial. The investigation had revealed a pattern: false arrests, fake reports, abuse of power. His lies had finally caught up to him. But no one expected what would happen next. Dan sat at the defense table, stiff and pale. He refused to look at Alina. The judge called the room to order. The prosecutor spoke first, showing body cam videos, old complaints, and interviews with victims. The evidence was clear. Dan had used his badge like a weapon. Then the judge turned to Alina. "Miss Grace," he said, "would you like to speak?" She stood. Her steps were slow, steady. The room fell silent. Alina stood before everyone, not angry, not nervous, just calm, just true. "I remember that day," she began. The cold, the cuffs, the silence. People listened closely. She looked straight at Dan. "You didn't ask questions. You didn't care. You saw my skin, not my story." Dan blinked hard but said nothing. "You lied about me. But worse than that, you made me feel invisible." Her voice didn't shake. But that moment taught me something. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs time. The judge leaned forward. "Do you want to press for maximum punishment?" The room held its breath. Alina looked down. Then, slowly, she shook her head. "No, I want something better." Everyone was confused. Alina continued, "I don't want revenge. I want change. I want every officer in this city to go through training, real training. And I want Dan to be the first one." People whispered. Reporters scribbled. Even the judge looked surprised. "Training?" the judge asked. "Yes," Alina said. "Make him learn. Make him face what he caused. Not just with prison bars, but with truth." The judge paused, then nodded slowly. "That's powerful. The court will consider your request." Dan finally looked at her, not with hate, but with something else. Regret. Outside the courtroom, a crowd waited. When Alina stepped out, people clapped, not for drama, not for winning. They clapped for her courage. Later that night, Alina sat on her balcony, the city lights below. Naomi joined her. "You could have asked for years in prison," Naomi said softly. "I know," Alina replied. "But some cages don't teach anything. I want him to grow, not just suffer." Naomi smiled. "You've changed, you know." Alina looked at her. "No, I just finally became who I was always meant to be." A month later, a new law was signed, the Grace Act. It required all officers in the city to complete emotional awareness and anti-bias training, and it created a review board led by citizens, including Alina. She never asked for fame. But now, her story protected others. On her way home one day, Alina saw a young girl sitting alone outside a courthouse. She walked over and sat next to her. "You okay?" Alina asked. The girl wiped her eyes. "My brother got arrested, and no one believes he's innocent." Alina gently smiled. "Then maybe it's time they did." She handed the girl her card. "Call me tomorrow. We'll talk." As Alina walked away, the girl whispered, "Who was that?" A man nearby replied, "She's the woman who changed everything," without ever raising her voice.